All right, so we are joined all the way from Abuja, Nigeria, by the amazing Amarachi Johnson-Ubah, uh, d- uh, development relations specialist, multiple degrees in computer science. Just so glad you could join us today. We're recording this for all of our computer science and engineering classes in Madison County schools, and I've got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School, and we are also recording this for our YouTube channel. So we thank you so much for joining us from all the way across the Atlantic Ocean today.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
And I know you're having some video issues, but we really appreciate you taking some time for us. Now, obviously, you do a lot in with She Code Africa and Consensus and all the things you're involved in, and really
Mm.
involved in some cool stuff over there in Africa. But just give us a little background because you did one thing we've talked about is that in tech fields and especially in computer science fields, more and more people are getting involved without doing the university route. But you did do the university route. You went to the Michael Akpara University there in Nigeria, and you got a master's degree in artificial intelligence from the National Open University of Nigeria. So, tell us about a little bit about your educational background because you were really on ahead of the game when it came to technical training.
Yeah, thank you very much for asking that. Um, just as you rightly stated, I studied computer science from the Michael Okpara University of Agriculture. And one of the surprising things that happened while I was in school was that prior to what I had hoped, which was that going to the university was going to make me a computer wizard, it didn't. I schooled in a university where most of the things that we learned about computers were mostly theoretical. So my venture into tech didn't happen until I graduated from the university. So I think that's one of the main reasons why people, even without degrees, still get to thrive in tech, because especially for us here in Africa, a lot of our university systems, apart from the private universities, a lot of the public universities focus more on theoretical knowledge. So based on the theoretical knowledge, you can be an A-grade student, do well in academics, but then you are not just fit for the tech world because you lack the skills. So you know
There you go.
you have the understanding of how things should work, but somehow you've not been able to really practice what you've learned. So when I finished from the university, I got into tech, and that was the first time I became hands-on, taking courses, actually coding and seeing things that I'm coding come to life or being deployed to production and things like that. So my pursuing a master's degree is based on the love I have for academia, because one of the goals I had for getting into tech in 2018 was that when I realized the skill gap that existed, because I graduated with the first class as well. So when I saw the skill gap that existed between a first class degree holder in computer science and the actual tech world, I decided that I was going to pursue academia so that someday I would come back as a lecturer, a university lecturer, to properly lecture students, not just in theoretical aspect of tech, but with a real world experience as someone that has actually delved into tech. Because I think one of the reasons why there is the skill gap that exists is that we have a lot of lecturers who don't actually have the practical experience. So they have the book knowledge, and they also go ahead to pass on that book knowledge. So this is basically what my motivations have been. And while I haven't actually gone back to the academic system, the master's degree and the extra degrees I've been getting are all geared towards that goal of someday, somehow, returning to the academia, to the academic sector as a lecturer. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's funny that every tech guest we've had, whether it be here in the United States, whether it be in the United Kingdom, and now in Africa, they're all saying the same thing is that we need tech professionals, but they don't necessarily have to be somebody that has gone to university and gotten a degree. It can be
Yeah.
people that have done the boot camps. It can be people that have gotten just a training through an associate program. So there are numerous jobs that need to be filled that don't necessarily have to go a university route because of the technological advances and the demand for tech that these companies are having.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, one thing that you are very passionate about and you are very well versed in as an expert is developer relations.
Yeah,
And I think that's really big because every company, no matter if it's a food company, a tech company, a lodging company, a transportation company, they need IT people, they need computer people, they need cybersecurity people, they need people to implement their platforms, they need coders. And it really is a field that is present in every single industry. And I
yeah,
think what you do is really cool because you've actually coded the platforms, you've walked people and trained them how to use the platforms and shown how it can benefit their business. Because with
yeah,
the growing trend of businesses worldwide, especially in a fast growing economy like Nigeria, one of the fastest growing economies in the world, the way businesses are going to do business changes. So they need people that are well versed in tech and to come in and help them run their business.
yeah, exactly. Developer relations to me, like it's a very unique part in the tech ecosystem, being that somehow a knowledge of coding, the actual stuff, and the knowledge of marketing, the knowledge of the community, the people. So I usually see it as a meeting point between tech and the people. That's where I basically work. Yeah, so it's not just about the tech, but then about the people as well.
That's awesome. And I know you've talked about it because you're such a small group. You really do everything. You've handled the sales side, you've handled the coding side, and you've handled the implementation side. So, what other skills have you learned other than obviously all your coding skills and your technology skills? What other skills have you learned that has helped you become so successful in this? Because you've got a big presence in Nigeria, you've got a presence in Cameroon, and you're starting to get more of a presence worldwide. So you are having to really develop sales skills and develop
Mhm.
people skills in order to train people because you're the expert in this area.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's actually an interesting question because I started off my tech journey as a front-end web developer in
Yep.
2018. So that was how I started. I learned HTML, CSS, all of that front-end
Oh
stuff.
wow.
And I did that for about 2 years before I started volunteering for Shikura Africa as a community manager. So
Okay.
after volunteering at Shikura Africa for a while, I actually started to like community management. I found that I had more strength as a community manager, and I pivoted in 2021 to become a full-time community manager. So the skills I've picked along the way is basically my front-end web development skills. In 2020, I started technical writing. I have a couple of technical articles on my blog. I also write for Free Code Camp, Works Hub, and a couple of other developer communities. And of course, as a community manager, we can be like multi-skilled. Community management is not just one thing. There is the part of ability to organize and host events. You have social media management, project management, program management. It's like one job role, but a lot of skills are needed to excel as a community manager. And these skills were not just gotten in a day for me. Right from when I was a front-end web developer, I used to volunteer a lot. So one of the core things that my transitions in tech taught me was about the need for whether computer science student or whether a techie to not just box yourself into one thing, like just saying, oh, I'm a front-end web developer, therefore there is just nothing else I can do apart from writing codes. So despite the fact that I was writing codes, I volunteered in my local community back then. I volunteered for a couple of events. I spoke at events. I co-organized. I handled social media, all of those things. And I was doing them for free, not necessarily because I wanted to pivot at that point, but I just loved to contribute and give back to my community. So all of these skills that I had gathered unconsciously somehow were the very things that became the essence of my pivot into community management eventually. So at some point in 2020 as well, during the pandemic, I picked up tech tutoring where I organized online classes for students that were affected by the global pandemic. They were at home. So children with between the ages of like 6 to 12, I organized free classes where I taught them Scratch programming, you know,
Wow.
so all of those things, yeah. So all of those things is like a lot of things, but then eventually, as a community manager, when you see the job description of a community manager, it just looks like they've been expecting you to have done all of this, right? So even though when I was doing them, I had no idea where they were going to land me, but eventually now looking back and connecting the dots, I can see how much all of those extra skills I had gotten even while I was actively coding became very relevant in where I am today. Because as a community manager, I get to write a lot. I get to write articles. I get to, host events. I get to speak at events, all of those things that I have done in the past that had grown me and helped me to excel in my current role as a community manager within the DevRel in organizations.
That's awesome. And something I was reading about on one of your websites is that the reason this is so important is because businesses need to advance technologically in order to do business. They have to manage
Yeah.
databases. They have to manage they have to have some sort of point of sale for a customer. They have to manage all of their records. They have employee databases. So these
Mm.
companies that maybe don't have a tech background need tech people to come in and train them on this. So that's why it's so important
Yeah.
to learn all these different programming languages. And you mentioned the front end and back end. The front end is what everybody sees. You mentioned CSS, HTML, but the back end is what really is behind the scenes that manages all of this data and protects the data from any type of attack or any type of virus. So, what are some of the other
Mm.
coding languages that you've become familiar in your experience as a community manager?
Okay, community management doesn't entail coding directly.
Okay.
So community management is like, as I said before, an intersection between tech and the people. So as you rightly
Okay.
mentioned, businesses, organizations want to get closer to the people who use their products. And it is
Yep.
common knowledge that developers don't like to be marketed to. So most of the time, developers want to feel a sense of belonging to the products they use, and not just you telling them, oh, our product is amazing, try it out, and all of that. So community managers are mostly people that serve as an intermediary between organizations and the users or the consumers, the people who use their products. So we communicate with our community, we moderate the spaces and try to bring them together, hear from them, bring feedback from them, basically giving them a sense of belonging, showing them that they belong to this community and that their voices matters within our community and within the organization as well. We also give them certain incentive in order to, boost user-generated content and all of that. So for some organizations, community managers can be part of marketing team, but for a lot of companies, they are part of the developer relations team. So most of the time, community managers don't code. They don't code actively. However, developer advocates code sometimes, depending on the organization they joined. But community managers, mostly what we do is tilted more towards marketing and people management and project management as well, more than it actually actively involves coding. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Now, obviously, and you briefly mentioned this, you've been involved in some great charitable organizations and great philanthropic organizations, She Code Africa, EduTribe, um, and it's really picking up a lot of steam. I think I saw you said you have 17,000 members in She Code
Yeah.
Africa now, and EduTribe was to get to reach 1 million Africans into technology by the year 2035. So, talk a little bit about what you're doing in that and why you feel such a need to really bring that to the forefront in that community. Because we already said Nigeria is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Abuja is one of the fastest growing cities in the world, and it's getting more and more technologically advanced. So, what have groups like She Code Africa and EduTribe done to really bring technology to the forefront for the young people there?
Thank you very much. That's a very good question. And by the way, She Code Africa is currently at over 40,000 women in tech in the
Wow,
community. And
that's incredible.
yeah, and I'm no longer with She Code Africa at the moment. I left the team last year, June last year, due to other engagements that I had to do. But I left the team at the point where we were almost 30,000 plus women in tech
Wow.
in our community. And as you rightly said, Nigeria has a large population of young people. And as we already know that tech is like the next thing. In fact, the current thing is actually tech, and then the world is also tilting more and more towards tech. So whether one is a doctor or a lawyer or finds themselves in any career path at all, tech plays an intrinsic role in virtually everything we do. And as I already mentioned, there was a skill gap between my academic pursuits and my actual tech journey. Please give me a second. There is a knock on the door.
Sure.
All right. Sorry about that.
It's fine.
So, the need for the programs that we organize, the things we do is mostly to reach the unreached, people who may also be experiencing the same skill gap barriers that I must have experienced. I believe like I'm not the only one who must have gone through that. There are millions of people who are not still skilled when it comes to digital skills. And the purpose of organizations like She Could Africa, Edu Tribe, and a couple of other communities that I've volunteered with is to stand at the forefront to bridge the gap between the Nigerian youth, the African youth, and tech by providing them with resources, with the things, with the required knowledge and skills that they need. So at She Could Africa, we do this by running boot camps, running mentorship programs, giving laptops for people who don't have laptops, resources like data stipends,
Wow.
basically trying to bridge that divide and bringing more and more people into the tech ecosystem, empowering them for the future, which is already here. Right. And, making them job ready as well. There are a lot of people who are currently unemployed and who are also unemployable. So by bringing them digital skills, teaching them tech, they can leverage the vast opportunities in the tech ecosystem to better their lives and also better their society as well.
Wow. And I couldn't agree more because I don't care where you are in the world, the tech skills are the jobs of the future. Here in the United States, the media love to tell us that we're going to lose our jobs to artificial intelligence. And as somebody that has a master's degree in artificial intelligence, I think you can agree that that's not going to happen. But the types of jobs worldwide are going to change. The skills needed for these jobs are going to change. And there's nothing we can do about it. So in order to be successful and be competitive in the job market, you're right. You've got to start training young people on how to use these skills.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, before I get to the students' questions, I did want to ask, as students are on the fence about going to university, going and deciding what they want to do with their career, what are some languages that you see now that would be most beneficial for them to learn, even if it was through a Google boot camp or through an online tutorial?
All right, thanks for the question. Although currently I don't code actively, so I may be unable to provide expert opinions on the current trends in programming languages. But then there has been a lot of movements around Python, around JavaScript and Rust these days, even though I don't have like concrete evidences to prove why these languages may be the next big thing or why they are going to be very important for anyone to learn. So I would say they go ahead and also make their own researches. Thankfully, we have Google to, ask all these questions, and then they should also join certain tech communities. I believe people already in the field will be able to give more concrete and expert opinions on things like this. And then whatever language it is, by the way, they should just go for it. I think the most important thing when it comes to programming is to be good at it. I don't think it's only about the programming languages itself if you don't get to be great at it. So whether it's Python or Rust or whatever language at all, just make sure that you're a good one and that you're very good at it. I believe they won't just run out of fashion so fast.
Yeah, and I agree. Just like any other skill is needed across fields. But I do have some questions from the students. I'll get to as many of these as I can. Um,
Mm.
I like this one. Levon Johnson, he's in ninth grade, and he asked, as a child, what made you decide to get into tech?
Great. So I did not decide to get into tech as a child, by the way, because as I said, Nigeria is much different from America. That depending on where you grew up, depending on the environment where you grew up, a lot of us were not privileged to know about tech when we were children. I was, I think, 16 when I actually got to know about tech, and then I got enrolled for a computer training and also chose to study computer science in the university. So I was 16 at that time, and then I pursued tech. So if you already private to knowing about tech as a child, it's a great thing because I have also made it one of my missions to teach children how to code and tell them about tech, which is what I spent almost the whole of my 2020 doing. Yes.
Awesome. This is Michael Sherrill, one of our American football players here at the school. And he asked, what is the most rewarding part of your career?
I think the most rewarding part of my career, the most rewarding part of my career was the volunteering efforts that led me into actually pivoting into community management. The best year in my career basically is 2020. It was the most difficult that I had as well, but it was also the best year. It was the year that I was able to try a lot of things: technical writing, teaching children how to code, community management, volunteering, hosting events. Like, because of the pandemic, I had a lot of time in my hands and I tried so many things. And that year was the turning point for me in my career as well. So yeah, I think that year was the best year for me and the hardest as well, because I received the most rejections that year as well, because I was job
Oh, wow.
hunting at the time. And yeah, and my volunteering efforts are like the best moments for me in my tech career.
That's awesome. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us today. But before we go, obviously, people need to follow you on social media. You're a great social media follow. Great articles you're putting out in podcast on your YouTube. Really good advice there. We'll get that information out so everyone can follow you. But before we go, why should these young people at 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 years old really consider learning these technical skills to get into these technical careers?
For me, I would say it's power. I think it's a very thrilling experience to be able to build and make things. And as young people, I believe that we all have a very creative mind, and the ability to learn how to code at such a young age is like giving wings to your creativity. You can literally think up something and build it. There is really no restraint. You can choose to build your own game, assuming the games you see in your app store is not like enough for you. So it's the power that it gives, the ability to create something meaningful, the ability to create something that maybe not just you will eventually end up using, something that can influence the whole world. Imagine things like Facebook connecting and bringing the whole world together. It was the idea of one young person. Imagine something like Zoom, where we're currently having our call. It was someone's idea. So ideas, the ability for you to build things that can eventually change your world. I think it's one of the most fascinating thing about learning how to code. And as young people, I advise you to just go for it. Like there is no barrier to how creative you can get in tech. Nobody's going to say, oh, you can create this, but you can't create this. You can just let your creativity fly as far as you want it to.
Wow, man, I love it. And you know, and you're right, because if people would not have learned to code and created things, we wouldn't be talking to somebody in the United States all the way in Africa right now. So you are
Yeah.
absolutely correct. And that is such a great way to put it. And I really encourage everybody, if you learn to code, you learn to create things. It really is the universal language. So we thank you for joining us all the way from Abuja, Nigeria. Amarachi Johnson-Ubah, one of the leading tech people over there in the beautiful country of Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much. I hope I can be able to join you once again and then get to also see the students. Somehow, I would have been thrilled to really see the audience in this call. But then, thank you all so much for listening to me today.
All right, you're very welcome. I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Thank you.
See ya.